can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Say yo. Again, Mikey isn't here. The one who came up with these ideas. Actually, this is my idea. That when we were going over topics.
Well, if it's your idea, don't give it to Mikey.
Well, no,
take
I mean,
ownership here, pal.
we were going back and forth. I said, well, basically, yeah, that's a good one too. And so it's top 5 wrestlers who didn't exceed, or just didn't reach their full potential, I should say.
Okay.
Now, today we're going to go through Mikey's list, kind of break it down, and then we're going to go through your list.
Terrific.
Okay, and I think I may have one person to add.
Okay.
To this, and that would be it. I'm thinking. If I think of another one, I'll let you know. No, 2.
So I'm going to be put in the
2.
role of thinking what Mikey would embellish. Okay,
was
great.
Thinking.
Right.
Yeah, because he just gave me the list. He just gave me 5 names, but then nothing.
Psychological thriller.
So he couldn't. Yeah. I mean, this is a text. I don't want him to write a book about it, but he could have said so-and-so because
So maybe I'm gaslighting
this.
Mikey because he told me
I don't know, but
I'm going to interpret it.
You really tore apart his last top 5. So I'm waiting to hear how you're going to say, oh, that guy was garbage.
I'm going to say that was strong.
Okay.
Tore apart, yeah.
All right. Are you ready? Here we go with Mikey's. By the way, I see maybe one of these 2 of these on your list, possibly. You can tell me if they're on your list or not.
Okay.
All right. First one, Magnum TA. Explain to me who that is. I do not know who that is.
He was paralyzed in a terrible car accident in, I want to say November or December. It's before that, of 1986.
Okay.
He was working in the NWA.
This wasn't Dark Side of Wrestling, was it? I don't remember.
No, they have not done a story on Magnum, but he was huge in Louisiana with Mid-South.
Should they have?
Well, I don't know if it's dark. His story is not so much dark side of the ring.
Just tragic.
Yeah, just tragic.
Well, they did that with the Von Erichs, didn't they?
Well, the Von Erichs really
had demons in the closet.
Yeah,
too.
when you kill
you're
yourself
right. You're right.
Brothers and
you're right.
Sad.
Yeah. Okay. So
Magnum would have been the next NWA champion.
Really?
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Handsome guy, in shape. Once again, authentic, very believable. Yeah, I mean, sad stuff.
And died in a wreck.
Did not die. Paralyzed. Sorry.
Paralyzed.
Yeah, he was paralyzed. And,
You probably said that.
I probably did say die. Sorry.
No, you may have said paralyzed.
Yeah, paralyzed in a really bad car accident in a Porsche and right close to his house.
Oh.
And it was just and paralyzed. I guess he's not in a wheelchair, but I mean he never could work again. And
so this is right around the Superstar era.
This is when they were gearing up head to head. They were going after them against Vince.
So if he would have kept going, you think he would have been a bigger name? I definitely think
like
a Rowdy Roddy Piper and stuff like that. Would he have fit up in those?
Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
I think it hurt Dusty because Dusty did not know where to go after that.
Oh, was he teamed up with Dusty?
Yeah, he was like Dusty's boy. I mean,
okay.
I mean, it was like that one.
Wow, it impacted
1B.
Someone else's career then.
Yeah, I think because Dusty was the booker, I think his creative vision was nothing but Magnum taking that belt
and running
shortly
really
and having a big run with it and being this new big babyface that would challenge the way Hogan was the big babyface in New York, but in a different way because Magnum was this just rugged guy, Harley Davidson T-shirts, the kind of guy that you would see if you're from the South.
That's a bankable star,
right?
You sell T-shirts. You bring
I mean the girl. Seats. That's the kind of the women are like and the guys are like hell yeah. That's how I want to be, So
okay, I got you.
I think his whole story is just very, very sad.
So I mean, we're looking at like impacting wrestling history.
I think he would have. I definitely think.
Okay, so this is a good pick for Mikey. Then.
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
huge pick.
Not a pick that you had though.
Not a pick I had.
Okay, wow.
I interpreted this list a little differently, but I'll get into that later.
All right, that's fine. Get into that later. His next one on here, I'm kind of confused, but I kind of know why. Lita had that, was a neck injury, right, or something, or back? What was it?
Yeah,
That
she
kind of
had
took it out.
Yeah,
But she kind of achieved what she. I don't know. I think she.
I think
did
Lita was a great character too. I think her run
Yeah.
with Edge, when they really went after how her and Edge became a real life couple and
Mm-hmm.
embraced that, I thought she was incredible.
Yeah, I thought. I don't know. Do you think her time was cut short? Didn't reach her
I don't.
full potential.
I
mean,
don't
she
know
did have
how
to
much more
retire, like-
potential she could have reached
yeah.
ring wise, because the division just wasn't. If you put her in today's division, and that
She would have
she
sung.
hurt,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be a bigger
She.
loss.
You're right. She's from an era where wrestling was just coming up, but there's maybe one or two that she could
Yeah, it was
really
her and
wrestle against.
Trish. They were the
And then-
top two by far,
And that was
of
it.
that-
Yeah. Oh no.
of that.
Yeah. It was just the two of them, and they didn't really have anyone else who could hold their own weight. They were all just divas. Real. I mean, that maybe
Right,
the,
yeah.
The divas looked good.
Yeah, that was-
They fought in bikinis.
Correct.
They fought in pools and oil baths. And
Not
mud
that there's
baths.
anything wrong with that.
That's that. There you go. But the thing is, though, yeah, that's what the era was for women's wrestling.
Correct.
And it wasn't this type of high talented. Even though people loved her
Yes.
for her high flying, for her wrestling capabilities, her looks. I remember my roommate, Bruce's little brother, loved Lita. Oh, had Lita posters everywhere. So
Uh-oh.
But yeah, he's a big Lita fan. But all right, so I think she did hit potential. But obviously, Mikey doesn't think full potential was given for whatever reason. Now, another one he mentions here, which I can understand why, but he said Kerry Von Erich.
Yep.
He puts one of the Von Erichs, but he put Kerry on there, and I did hear that because this is in Dark Side of Wrestling.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone was saying he was. I mean, if he hits the major circuit, he just takes over.
Well, he had the most bankable look. He was just carved out of stone. Mm-hmm. You know, he looked like Arnold, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, he had that real growth hormone looking jaw and bone structure because he was loaded to the gills. But I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying
No, that's bankable.
he was
Again,
incredibly. I mean, he had a high school shot put record and all this kind of stuff. So he was a big, strong kid, and yeah, I mean, he was definitely. You know, his brother that died, David, I think was on a higher trajectory as far as talent. He would have been the NWA talent champion because he had went to Japan and he had worked as a heel in Florida.
David was the older one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can see why you would put Kerry on that list. But Kerry was so self-destructive.
Right. He was his own worst enemy.
Right. He didn't suffer. He was just he was overwhelmed with life. He was
But-
not emotionally prepared for what that business at that time could do to someone.
But if his ways would have changed, and that's the sad thing. He destroyed himself there. But
Yeah, I mean, he lost his foot in a motorcycle accident, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Riding a motorcycle with no shoes on?
what are you thinking?
Right. I mean, my God, if anybody reads that story now, they go, "What a idiot!" And that's sad because the guy had, you know, I mean,
He had everything. Yeah, he
he
could.
had a lot of potential.
Yeah, they owned Texas.
Correct.
They didn't have to pay for a thing. He walked into a store; it was already paid for.
Right.
Yeah, so everything came to him honestly on a silver platter, and hitting a national circuit.
And
just
his- you know,
with
his-
his physique, with his abilities, it could have dominated the business.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see that one. All right, so far none of these are on your list, correct?
No, but once again,
Okay.
we're looking at this list a little
No,
bit
okay,
differently.
okay.
So
All right, Eddie Guerrero is on here.
totally.
I believe so. I think he had just hit peak potential and then got snuffed out before we could see more of that great legacy.
Yeah, I think he was where he was going to be a big star for probably the next 3 years for sure.
Solid.
Yeah,
Big
he
league,
was
big main eventer.
Top echelon, working with everybody
Yeah.
who was important kind of
Now,
situation.
like he was just getting a taste of it, and he was about to just take over the whole business. You know, every dream match should be you pit people against Eddie.
Well, I
you
think
see
he
what
had,
they could
but
do.
I think he had all that. I think that was it. He was at a point where he could start working with other guys and really take guys who were B level performers to B plus, A minus.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally all around good guy too, which I'm guessing is why
Yeah, I mean, guy that turned his life around, had a lot of struggles, made a lot of bad personal choices, but really, loved the wrestling business, grew up in the business, and really developed a lot of incredible characters as far as like his WWF run with, gosh, just look at what he did with China.
Mamacita, I was gonna say, it was just
that
great.
Was huge.
And I think that's what built for him to keep. He climbed up the ladder slowly. He was in, European, Intercontinental,
Yeah,
and
he
just
did everything.
slowly.
Yeah, he ascended.
But his matches were always solid. You always could depend upon him. As the villain, he could do good. As the hero, he could do good. I mean, he played both sides really well.
Correct.
So yeah, I totally agree with that one.
I agree.
So, all right. So the last one, which I knew was going to be on here, Owen Hart. Because that's what he thinks about when didn't hit his peak. Now, here's my deal. I believe, and I'd love to hear Mikey argue with me, Owen Hart was going nowhere, and he was going to stay mid-card. Everyone says, man, he was the best. If he could have just... No, there was no way. Vince didn't want him. He didn't want to do the R-rated stuff. So Vince was making a joke out of him. He never would have been good. Oh, but what if WCW wouldn't have done nothing with him? There was no, not to be cruel, Owen Hart is very talented, but there's no future that Owen Hart starts main eventing and getting his big break, in my opinion. Again, not being cruel. Agree or disagree?
I could not agree with you more.
Okay. Well, you know how everyone talks about it now.
Well,
if Owen Hart would have been around, he could have shown
Owen
the world.
was going to be a main event player, he would have been a main event player the day he walked back into that locker room after Bret left the company with the screw job. He would have been immediately put in a program with Shawn.
Yep.
That was where he needed to go. Once he did not do that, he was just a really talented, possibly underrated performer because he could have a good match with anyone. But that was it.
Yeah. And everyone speaks well of the dead. And I mean, they should because he was a good wrestler. I'm not taking anything away from him.
My God, it's a terrible story. Sad.
Yeah. Oh,
he's a great family guy. I mean, probably
Yeah.
he's the best guy on that list as far as being a family man.
Mm-hmm.
Then he get wrapped up in this crazy business.
But I agree with you. That was his one break. If he could have walked away, signed with WCW.
No, I don't think he should have ever signed with WCW.
Moved
and
to
I'm
that-
about
you
to
don't think
jump
they
into
would've-
that next.
Okay.
So we can transition whenever
No, that's
you're ready.
fine. We'll transition. But yeah, again, I don't think he ever would have
His
reached.
if he was going to be a star, a main event star, he needed to have a feud with Shawn straight out the jump.
Yeah.
And if he didn't get the feud with Shawn, he should have destroyed Hunter because it didn't matter. Hunter was not a main event guy there.
That's true.
And then he could have said, could have did a bit of angle and said, hey, I'm going to break his arm unless you give me a match or something, and made him a very believable, rugged babyface.
I agree with that.
Completely crapped that out.
I agree with that.
And you got to blame Vince on that. And Vince did not see Owen the way he saw Bret, and he used him the exact opposite.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Good that you do too.
I would say Vince used Owen to transition into my number one.
Go for it.
How WCW used Bret Hart. The biggest screw up in wrestling history was WCW handling Bret.
Do you think, because we've talked about the fall of WCW, which addresses this, do you feel that if they brought Bret Hart in a different way, and start having him, just using him differently, introducing him differently, having him get into the next big match, does this solidify WCW even further away, or does Vince still...
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so not
I
that
think
monumental.
Once
It was a monumental error how they
bungled
him.
They bungled the second half of '97. That
Yeah.
was their downfall. As far as creative sense, I'm not saying about them going out of business. That's a Turner
Okay.
Broadcasting screw up with AOL. And if anybody argues that, Look at the Braves in the 90s and their payroll and what they did to the Braves. They chopped them down and made
That's
them
true.
like a C-level talent when
Small
Atlanta
town
was
team again.
A
Dominant
plus team.
in the
My God,
90s.
they had everybody.
Going to the playoffs or the World Series every
They
year.
got Maddox over the Yankees in like 92 when they were going to pay him more.
Yeah.
But Atlanta paid more. So anyway,
Anyway, all right. So keep going though.
I just
so,
think
what about that? Yeah.
I just think that they completely screwed that up. A way of introducing Brett would have do the right finish at Starrcade. Sting comes into the ring the next night on Nitro, and he has this big interview where he finally starts talking to Mean Gene about the past year, about everything that happened, and then NWO comes out and they just surround the ring, and they say, "There's no way you can stop us all." And he's like, "You know what? I'm going to try. I've got my bat." And then you hit that Bret Hart music. And Bret comes out and says, "Nope.
We're stopping this.
Yeah, this is over." Then you build that with those two guys, and you can have a turn eventually. But if they would have done that and aligned those two guys,
Yeah,
that way you
that's
would
a good
have
way to
slowly
do.
be elevating Goldberg that whole year.
Yep.
You would have had him ready. You already had Dallas ready. You had like these 4 pillars right there. You still had Flair. All of this good stuff. And really delved into you could have really kept going with WCW versus NWO versus splitting the NWO up and watering it completely down worse than it was. And that is all Hogan. I don't care what anybody says about Hogan. Hogan, whatever great things Hogan did for wrestling, he hurt so many guys' careers. I'm not saying that his turn didn't rejuvenate the business.
Right.
And I love Voodoo Child, but man, he did a lot of damage in WCW. A lot of damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how could WCW handle Owen Hart? He would have buried him the same way. That's what I'm saying. Him going
Didn't
to WCW,
matter.
it wouldn't have mattered. They got Davey Boy. They didn't do anything with Davey Boy.
No, they didn't. That's true. That's true. Okay, so screwing up Hart. No, I agree with this. I like where you're going here.
Okay.
And Hogan did water down that business.
Yeah, I mean, why do it? Why say I'm going to have one half of the NWO and Nash takes one half, but I'm going to get Hall? I mean, it's just so convoluted and stupid. Because Hogan wanted somebody cool with him. Because Hogan on his own
It's not cool.
is,
and he
Postomania brother. He's not cool like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
No,
I'm
he's
not
not.
saying that he did not make the NWO. That's what made it so unique was the 3 of them. But Hogan on his own is Jimmy Hart and Brutus Beefcake and all that dumb crap.
Yeah, yeah.
Thunder in Paradise, silliness.
Just like Hogan. It's lame.
Correct. One-dimensional.
Okay. All right.
Boot.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop the boot, hit you with the boot, leg drop. I might pin you and drop my thermos on your face. I mean, that's just how he was. He didn't care.
I agree.
I mean, if I would talk to anybody about how poorly he handled his fellow talent.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm sure I knew who he was in the 80s. You know, he was a big superstar and blah, blah, blah. But when I started watching him, I felt like this guy has nothing to give.
Right. He takes a lot. He took as much as more than he gave.
I agree with that 100%. All right. So what's the next one?
Taz's debut at the Royal Rumble in 2000 against an undefeated Kurt Angle came out Madison Square Garden, most famous arena in the world.
From ECW, fresh off
Blew
ECW.
the roof off the place. Right. That countdown was incredible. It was handled a lot like the Jericho. 3 months later,
nothing.
Can't use him. Triple H says, he's too small. He's hurting people. Well, he was small and hurting people in ECW. You know, why sign the guy? Why put all this invest into this incredible debut and not just let him be a mid-card guy? I mean, it just shows how poorly in WWF in that 2000 year when they were overwhelmed with too much TV, so much success, Austin going down. You know, you bring this guy in who could be a real player for you, and you completely, Hunter's like, nah, we can't use him.
Yeah. No, I agree. Another good one.
I mean, watch his debut.
Blew it off.
Of ECW. This is not someone coming from WCW who was hot.
Yeah.
Or WWF. This is the third company.
Distant third.
Right.
Small market.
Now, granted, it was in New York, but if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
That's true.
He was as over as anybody else that night.
Mm-hmm.
Had a great match with Kurt. Obviously, Kurt can work with a broom. But 3 months later, what are you doing with the guy?
Nothing.
Only because of Hunter.
Wow.
Which goes into my next one.
I'm ready.
So there's a big angle with Kurt Angle and Stephanie in 2000.
Okay.
And where there's this big kiss.
Okay.
You can go back and watch this on many different platforms. The crowd was so ready for Kurt. Kurt and Stephanie. They wanted it. What happens? Feud falls apart. Stephanie's back with Hunter. Why do you think that is?
Because Hunter didn't like it.
Exactly. Can't let him get too big.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Now, granted, in the past 15 years or whatever, Hunter has done a lot with younger talent and doing NXT and getting involved with
But
indies.
back then, just too hot-headed, wanting the spotlight on him.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Does he regret any of this, you think? Or he won't even talk about it?
I wouldn't. I don't think
No.
He'll spin that just like Vince and Hogan and all these other
Okay.
guys spin it.
Got it.
Well, why make Kurt like this? It's like, listen to the crowd. Like
Yeah,
we
the
talked about
crowd's
the
really eating
Hogan
it
and
up.
Rock match. And what led up to that was so dumb with the ambulance and Hogan driving a Ford or diesel and running into the Rock's ambulance.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. that just shows how bad the creative was then, because once you got to the match, the crowd exploded.
Yeah, it
The
wasn't
crowd
about all
was
the
so
junk.
ready for Kurt and Stephanie. Couldn't do it.
What has Kurt Angle said about this? He has
He's
a
had
podcast, doesn't he?
probably 19 concussions. He probably remember this happened.
That was the Stephanie ones?
Yeah.
Wait, I was in the WWE?
They're not going to say anything. I mean,
Okay.
he's on the payroll still. He's probably gets $250,000 a year at least. To just,
Okay. Well, a lot of these wrestlers shoot and then...
Well, yeah, they
But
do. And
not
then,
all of 'em.
And then they
Okay.
got to go get a job again.
Oh, well, yeah.
You know, it's hard
But you're-
to go from that profession to saying, you know what, I'm going to go work at Target
No, I got you.
or whatever. Because, I mean, these guys have a limited skill set. You know, if you spend your
That's true.
life in your 20s and 30s doing something that you're not going to do in your 40s, how many people in their 40s pick up a new trade? Not many.
Yeah.
Hell, I can barely work my phone. So, there's just a point where you don't really try to learn a whole lot of new stuff. You're just trying to remember what you knew.
Gotcha.
So what's Kurt Angle going to do?
That's true.
Which I'm not
that's
knocking
fair.
the guy.
That's
you know?
fair.
But, I think that was two gigantic detrimental things that happened in 2000 that are directly tied to the infamous son-in-law.
Okay. All right. What's next? You got two more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the next one?
Okay, so I'm going to go with the most recent thing, and then I'm
Ooh.
going to give a very...
I like how you're going with recent. You're always trying to make one recent one. Good,
Right.
Good for you.
Well, I don't want people to think that we're just going to talk about the glory days. The incredible arrival and potential that was felt when CM Punk came back to wrestling in AEW, and the incredible fumble that became
I know nothing
him
about
leaving
this. So.
AEW.
Wow. So
So
they
he-
got him back.
Got him back. Now, granted, you're bringing a guy in who's in his early 40s, has not
Right.
wrestled pretty much in about 6 years,
Right. It's
has a
Punk,
history
though.
of concussions,
Right.
worked MMA, so Lord knows he got his bell rung there a handful
Couple
of times too.
yeah.
Bring him in, Chicago, incredible moment, loud crowd, you feel it. He has handful of good matches with people, seems to be working with the talent well, starts getting hurt. But you put this really superstar guy in here with these guys that have never really been on TV before on a regular basis, And it's a big difference. You can see there's a difference. You know, here's a guy who's a real pro, who's done it, who's worked indies, who's done everything, who's wrestled The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Like, this guy has had a real career.
Yeah, he's got tons of experience.
He
under his
didn't
belt.
wrestle in Japan in front of 6,000 people at a show no one saw that they said was the greatest match of all time.
Right.
Basically, a lot of resentment in the locker room. You got a lot of cliques. After a pay-per-view, they do these, what they call a media scrum, which is kind of convoluted that you're talking to the wrestling media of all things. But media overall is BS. And his boss is sitting beside him, Tony Khan, and he just starts going off and just talking about how ridiculous everything is and how the people that are in charge couldn't manage Target. And just, and I know I've referenced Target twice. I'm not knocking Target. Just saying.
Yeah.
You can watch this, check it out. You can see his boss is kind of like going, man, I'm not going to be able to fix this. I'm in over my head. But that's the problem. You put a guy in a situation where you know he's angry. Don't put him in front of a crowd or in front of that microphone, because he's already proven to be outspoken. You know?
Right.
And if he's at his wit's end dealing with your other guys that are in charge. It's kind of like telling someone to go to a party, like, hey, we got to go. And you're like, I don't want to go. And you get to the party and something happens and that person pulls out an Uzi. But they shouldn't have took him to the party. He said he didn't want to go. Punk should not have been put in that situation.
He was, and it just
went to the back, had words with somebody, got in a fight. That was it.
Yeah.
He's
Sad.
gone. So that's the end of his career in AEW.
On a whimper.
On a whimper.
Beforehand, it was mic drop.
Right. It was the biggest star.
Yeah.
And I know Daniel Bryan's a big star, and I'm not knocking that, but CM Punk is a bigger star than Daniel Bryan.
Hey.
Sorry. He is.
Leave your hate in the comments there.
Please do. I'm not saying he's a better wrestler. I'm not saying he can have a better bell-to-bell wrestling match, but CM Punk's impact on the wrestling business is much greater than Daniel Bryan's.
There we go. All right. What's number one? These are good.
Well, this is not. I wouldn't say this is number one.
Oh, well,
I'm just saying that my last one, and this
Excuse me,
this
you're
will
right.
be.
These aren't in any order.
Yeah, I don't want to categorize this.
Go ahead.
Although I do think Bret Hart is the number one screw up.
Okay. Good job.
Mean, my God, what a bunch of idiots! Screw Hulk Hogan. When Mid-South, which went to UWF, was bought out in 1987 by the NWA, who was Jim Crockett, which is where Magnum wrestled. Right. They brought a lot of that talent in, and they screwed it up, didn't do much with it. Sting did come into that. Rick Steiner, who became big stars, obviously, in WCW. But there was a guy who went on to be a huge star in Japan, who was Jim Ross's boy, Dr. Death Steve Williams.
Right.
Who was knocked out in the Brawl for All.
Right, and destroyed his career.
Correct. This is a guy who was legitimate, tough guy. Stories of him and Rick Steiner ripping doors off cars and all kinds of just ridiculous stuff. Getting into an argument with Hawk and about to get in a fight. I mean, if you're going to fight one of the Road Warriors and not pretend fight, like these guys are going to probably kill each other and gouge each other's eyes out, that's a legitimate dude. And they did nothing with him. They could have put him with Cornette.
Yeah.
Let Cornette have this other side guy and say, hey, this is my friend from Louisiana.
Help develop him, introduce him to the crowd, warm him up. Yeah.
Steve Williams could not put two words together other than saying, I'm going to give 110%. Yeah. And let me tell you something, brother. But obviously, Cornette can read the phone book and you're going to listen.
That's what you got.
You would have had him ready to go as your top heel below the Horseman. He could have worked with anybody. Incredibly talented. He was a huge star in Japan, and Lord knows everybody who loves wrestling loves talking about how great Japan is. The guy had a great career in Japan, but he was a legitimate tough guy.
Yeah.
He was a real wrestler.
Yes.
The guy could hurt you. He was like Rick Steiner. You could have put him with Cornette, and they dropped the ball with Rick Steiner too. Put him with Cornette and said they come up with the varsity club and all this other dumb crap. Just a complete screw up. And that's one of two people or both of them, Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair, screwed that up.
Screwed it up.
Because one of them's the top babyface and one of them's the top heel. And here's a number one threat to either one of those guys.
And they didn't pick him up and
didn't
the
do
right
anything
thing.
with him.
Wow. Good picks. Good picks. So I wonder if any of our listeners, if you have picks, you're wrestling fans out there, some of you are, let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on Princes of the Universe.